Hello, and welcome to today's version of biome exploration. Today, we will be exploring the mangrove forest biome. This is a very interesting and exciting biome that is commonly overlooked by those that live on the coast due to the fact that they see them every day because they are all around us. This beautiful, vibrant biome is full of life and has many aspects to explore. In today's exploration, we will look into the physical characteristics, abiotic and biotic limiting factors, human environmental impact, and a special endangered species from the biome, the mangrove finch. Sit back, relax, and let's explore the mangrove forest biome. Physical characteristics of the mangrove forest biome. A mangrove forest is a barrier of low-growing and marsh-like vegetation in the low-oxygen soil where a body of flowing water meets a body of land. Typically, mangrove forests are found off the coast of tropical land found on both sides of the equator. The latitudes in which mangrove forests are distributed across the globe are between 30 degrees north of the equator and 60 degrees south of the equator, creating a thick belt of tropical mangrove forest-filled land off the coast of these lands. Looking at the climatogram of the mangrove forest biome, you can see that the average yearly temperature is around 22 degrees Celsius. The average yearly rainfall for the mangrove forest biome is around 75 millimeters. During the months between September and March, there is a rainy season. Has a rainy season that lasts from September until March, when the average rainfall jumps to around 75 to 80 millimeters, and the average temperature jumps to around 25 degrees Celsius. And a dry season that lasts between the months of April until August, where the average temperature drops to around 17 degrees Celsius, and the average rainfall falls to around 60 millimeters. The soil of the mangrove forest contains low oxygen levels and is porous and swamp-like. The soil can either be above water as the tide is low or below the water when the tide is high in some areas. In other areas, the soil may be completely submerged or above the water without influence of the tides. Mangrove forests have a high water table due to the fact that the soil is extremely porous and the fact that they're where water meets the shore. The soil has a high concentration of silt and clay, making it very muddy and swamp-like outside of the water. This trend continues yet lessens out into more typical sand as the distance from the shore increases. Mangrove forests contain unique zonation. Typically, the mangrove forest ecosystem begins where the water level begins to become more shallow. As the water approaches the shore, the depth decreases slightly, leaving a larger area that is above water at low tide and below water at high tide. In this layer, the mangrove trees and back to the porous mud that is always above the water. These three zones create the zonation seen in the mangrove forest biome. Some abiotic limiting factors of life are the salinity of the water in the mangrove forest, oxygen concentration near the surface, and the amount of sunlight reaching the primary producers. If the salinity of the water were to be too high or too low, certain species would not be able to live in the mangrove forest ecosystem, and the mangroves may not be able to grow as well. If the oxygen concentration were too high or too low, the life forms could be suffocated or could be exposed to high, unhealthy levels of oxygen. Also, if the amount of sunlight were too bright or not bright enough, it would be possible that the life inside the fragile mangrove forest ecosystem would not live as it does. The main producers in the mangrove forest biome are phytoplankton, mangroves, seagrass, and algae. The phytoplankton use photosynthesis to produce an energy source in the ecosystem. Mangroves produce food for plant-feeding organisms, and when they shed their leaves, detritivores can eat the leftover. Seagrass also produces vegetation for herbivores to consume. Lastly, algae provides food for bottom feeders and detritivores. The main consumers in the mangrove forest ecosystem are the snapping shrimp, burrowing crab, tubeworm, and bristleworm. The snapping shrimp and the burrowing crab are detritivores. This means they consume the dead plants and animals in the ecosystem. The tube and bristleworms are decomposers, and like the detritivores, consume and decompose the dead animals and organisms of the ecosystem. The special adaptations plants have made to survive are the ability to survive in an environment in which they can either be submerged partially or fully at some points of the day and fully above ground at other parts of the day. The main adaptation that allows this is many wide-spanning roots for plants that allow the plant to be sturdy yet able to soak up water whenever possible and maintain it for the times the plant is above the water. Also, plants have adapted to be partially or fully submerged for parts or extended periods of the day or time, allowing them to survive when submerged. The special adaptations animals have made to survive are the ability to maneuver in shallow water for fish and marine animals. This also plays into the ability that some animals have to live both in the water and on land due to the tides that significantly change the landscape. For animals that hunt in the water, such as alligators and tigers, water-repellent skin or fur allows for the animal to stay waiting for long periods of time to be able to hunt. Also, in the many spanning branches of the plants, allows the ability for some animals to live in the trees in the many branches. Also, in the mud, many animals have found the ability to burrow or live on the ground. One main human environmental impact on the mangrove forest ecosystem is deforestation. Deforestation, or the clearing of the mangrove trees along the coast for the land to be used for harbors, residential, and easily irrigated agricultural land, is common. This destroys the mangrove forest ecosystem due to the fact that it cannot exist without an area where a coast and water source meet. Humans also impact the mangrove forest ecosystem by building dams and irrigation systems. These changes may reduce the salinity of the water and also may reduce the amount of water flow needed for a healthy mangrove ecosystem. This also may create standing water, which can become a breeding ground for vectors for infectious diseases, which would alter the life forms in the ecosystem. The long-term effects of these environmental impacts on the mangrove ecosystem that are caused by humans are deforestation, which may lead to a lack of water, and which would lead to a reduced number of trees, causing a reduced filtration effect and the buildup of sediment, leading to the remaining trees in the mangrove ecosystem to become suffocated and die. Now to talk about the special endangered species from the mangrove biome. The mangrove finch. The mangrove finch is an endangered species of the mangrove forest biome. They feed on larvae, spiders, and small insects. As of the year 2000, the mangrove finch has been classified by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, or the IUCN, as critically endangered. Previously, the mangrove finch held the status of endangered when it was placed on the endangered list in 1994, after its population continued to fall from the time it was placed on the threatened list in 1988. The mangrove finch is vulnerable due to the fact that the species as a whole live only in the islands inside of the chain of the Galapagos Islands. This limits their possible spread to the few islands, which limits their population size accordingly. Also, since the population is confined to the islands, disease is spreading between the finches, and a main reason for population decline is predation and the disease spread by these predators. Only an estimated 50 to 100 mangrove finches remain in the world, with approximately 40 to 80 of those individuals being mature, giving them a very small population size and leading to their vulnerability. Mangrove finches are protected under national law because they live on the islands claimed inside of the Galapagos National Park. This protects the land they live on and the species themselves from being harmed. Also, predator control is being carried out to help lessen the controlling factors of the population due to the fact that the population is threatened by disease and predation mainly from an invasive species of black rat. This recovery attempt is seen as unsuccessful because the number of mangrove finches continues to decline and the species has continued to work its way towards extinction as time has passed. Thank you for joining me today as we explored the mangrove forest biome. I hope you have learned a lot about the biome and how it can be seen as very interesting. Thank you and have a nice day.